Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 238th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We're starting off with about 40 people and action-packed as always. The first hour we're going to talk about American Nuremberg and the war crimes being perpetrated in our country. And we're going to be joined by the great GREG PALAST, who's going to talk about the world after No Kings 2. We also got a poem from Mimi, and hopefully Jennifer Roberts will be joining us with reports from the Gestapo attack in North Carolina, as we will hear also from Mimi in Portland, Oregon. The second hour, we're going to deal with energy and the massive tsunami of solar that is taking over the world and what it really means for all of us, and especially in terms of this great war crime known as nuclear power. But let's start off, if we can. We got a couple other guests with us as well, but we are anticipating the arrival of GREG PALAST and also of the great Mimi German, who's going to give us our opening poem. Mimi, please.
Hi, everybody. I was compelled to write a poem today about the food lines because they are not getting smaller. When why is not the answer, but when. The lines are long for bread and compassion, colored in the scent of dying flowers and yesterday's cigarettes. Layered clothing rags from the body in customary fashion of a failed go of it. The sideways downward cracks the dry stare on wet asphalt below the shimmer of holiday lights. They'll have to repair the streets again this year. Who drives this truck? And how did these feathers once blue turn red in the stain of pain? Today's status is muted in the reflection of greasy water caught in the leaves of the gutter. Thank you.
Woof. As always, Mimi, thank you very much. And let's hope their food lines will be ending soon when you have a country where two individuals separately have $500 billion. Why is anybody hungry in this country? Okay, the second poem actually will be mine. Can you flash it up there, Steve? So, because I just wrote it, I don't remember it. I watched last night with Susan, my wife, a half hour, well, it was an hour show, I believe, on Nuremberg. And there's a new movie coming out about Nuremberg, and it inspired me to think about what's going on in this country. And so this is the poem from the Karmic Reaper, and it's a project that we want to talk about. The poem is called American Nuremberg by the Karmic Reaper. You will not be in power forever. You will stand trial. That's a message from Adolf, Goering, Goebbels, Himmler, Heydrich, Keitel, von Ribbentrop, Speer, and Rome. And it goes to Donald, Vance, Miller, Witkoff, Patel, Bondi, Eric Jr., and Noam. You will not be in power forever. You will stand trial. That's my little gentle sentiment for the day. I see we're joined by GREG PALAST. GREG, good to see you, bro. And we're also joined by Jennifer Roberts. GREG is going to give us his latest genius in a few minutes, but we want to start with the former mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, two-time mayor, Jennifer Roberts, now with the Carter Center, and Mimi German to give us, shall we say, sister reports from two cities under siege, for which there will be war crimes trials. Jennifer Roberts is going to report to us from her native Charlotte, where she has been mayor, and Mimi German from Portland. Jennifer, can you tell us what's happening?
Well, we had a horrific week here in Charlotte. And we got reports that the Border Patrol has left, but we know that ICE is still operating in our city. So what we saw from videos that bystanders captured, we saw brutal arrests, we saw erroneous arrests, we saw citizens detained, we saw legal residents detained. We have one report of a pregnant mother who had abdominal pains after being thrown to the ground and arrested, had to go to the emergency room. Luckily, her baby is fine. But this is the kind of thing that we are seeing, and they seem to enjoy it. What we have also seen, though, is that our community has come together. We had trainings on how to be an ICE verifier and how to respond and help to warn people about the presence of Border Patrol and ICE. And we had 5 different nights in a church. Every night was either 400 or 500 people.
Wow.
Was incredible. I'm on about 6 different group chats. Some of them have over 300 people. There are neighbors who are shopping and bringing food to people's homes who are afraid to leave their house. There are parents who are driving kids to school because the parents are afraid to be seen near the school. We know that the Border Patrol hung out near schools. They went to a hospital. They have no shame. And we have had a tremendous response, though. And I think what we're doing is building a coordinated, community organized effort that is going to carry us through the midterms, because people are angry. They are angry at the methods. They are angry at the not targeted approach, but just widespread, if you're brown, you're going down kind of approach. And again, as I said, we had citizens stop. We had somebody who was picked up, detained. They don't notify your family. They don't let you talk to a lawyer. They took him all the way to Florida and realized he was a citizen, dropped him at a bus stop
Oh,
and told him to go home that way.
oh,
We had somebody detained in Georgia. We don't have an ICE detention facility here, and our sheriff is not letting them use our Mecklenburg County jail, and so they have to take them other places. For a while, they were using the FBI detention center. Again, not letting people talk to lawyers. We had lawyers waiting outside. We had citizens who were verifiers, with yellow vests and whistles, and U.S. citizens who were arrested for impeding their operations, given no access to attorneys, given no phone call, and then finally released after 4 hours just to be harassed. And we have other ways that people are being harassed. We had a predatory towing company. There was a gathering, a vigil at a Latino bakery, and a towing company came and booted 15 people while they were there, idling their cars, helping pick people up, and using foul language, pushing people around, and charging $750 to get the boot off because they were near a Latino business. And it was a parking lot, it was a public parking lot. So, there are different ways that they are finding to harass people, but we are standing strong. And I look forward to hearing about Oregon as well, because they did not expect this in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we are the bless your heart community. They just figured that we would let it happen and that we were, looking at law enforcement, but they didn't realize how fierce community members can be, especially moms. The moms of these kids who go to the language academies, and these are the American moms protecting their friends, neighbors, and their kids' friends at the schools. They do not mess around. And I think that they were surprised. During the Revolutionary War, Charlotte was called the Hornet's Nest by Cornwallis because of the fierce opposition that we gave to the British troops. And we are reigniting that spirit of the Hornet's Nest.
is that why the team is called the Hornets?
Absolutely.
God, I never knew that. If you can also explain Tar Heel along the way, that would be great. But Mimi, stay with us, Jennifer. We want to talk now about the American Nuremberg Project, and we want to document all this and get it on Zoom and set up an archive so that when the time for the trials come, we have our documentation. The first thing that Eisenhower did when the American troops marched into Bergen-Belsen was to bring in photographers. We have to be interviewing people on Zoom, create the archive, spread these stories. So stay with us, please. Mimi and Mayor Heide from Oregon, you want to continue this?
Yeah, I want to say that there's big news near where Mayor Heide lives. And just an update in Portland is there are very few anti-ICE rallies at the ICE or protests at the ICE building currently. And I think that the reason for that is that ICE is now moving it and has been now for a while, moving into the suburbs in Hillsborough, which is a largely Latino community, and going into stores and also schools, pulling kids out or pulling the parents out of their cars. And also where I live in St. John's, same thing. We have a couple of primarily Spanish-speaking elementary schools, so it's the same thing. So people are encouraged to go and do blockades against ICE to protect the kids from getting back with their parents. And Mayor Roberts, I have been watching what's been going on where you are, and it has been amazing. The fight, the strength and the will of the people to have zero tolerance for what is going on in their community has been very uplifting for me as an activist to see this, and I know for many other people. So, and right when things got going in Charlotte, we had people who were part of the 2017, I think it was 2017, been fighting Nazis for so long, I can't remember. But when they did the whole torch thing and they killed Heather Heyer, those Nazis are now in Portland. And I thought, the reason that we can handle them in Portland, like we know who they are. And the reason that they're not in Charlotte right now is because of the strength and the pushback, because these people are cowards and their strength is in their numbers, but when we show the numbers, they will disappear. So just good for you, good for the community. And I did want Mayor Heide to talk because our Senator Wyden was just in a neighboring town that is fighting having ICE come into a particular building on the coast. So, Mayor
Can I
Heide,
share?
go for it.
So,
Yeah.
Jennifer, this is Heidi. She's the mayor. She's the duly elected mayor of Waldport, Oregon, and now being opposed by a Nazi city council and trying to have them thrown out. Very interesting story, but I'll let her speak. Go ahead, Mighty.
Well, I wasn't even going to share that about that. That's a whole other story. What I wanted to share with you, Mayor Roberts, was ICE. We are the largest commercial fishing port on the West Coast. We do Dungeness crab and a lot of other fish. And we have a helicopter here that we need the Coast Guard to person so that they can go and save our fishermen. A lot of our fishermen are immigrants from other countries. So the feds took our helicopter last week and told us that in our airport, they were going to make a detention center for the whole West Coast.
Ugh.
Because, like you're sharing with us, the cities are saying no. And so they're going to these rural communities that are hurting for funding. And then they're taking things that really they need and then using that as leverage to create these detention centers. And I just wanted to share that in a town of 10,000, we had over 1,000 people. 1,000 people show up, and they said, "No, we are not doing that here." And Wyden did come yesterday to talk to the people, which I also want to share was mostly over 65 years old. I cannot tell you how awesome it is to see an angry grandma, really, really out there saying, we're not doing this again. We're not letting this happen in our neighborhood. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you
Mayor
so
Roberts.
much, two mayors here. So, my idea for the day is to start an American Nuremberg project where we video as many of these people who've been harmed as possible, and do it with Zoom. Make the Zoom file available. I was thinking of approaching the Pacifica Radio Network. I was wondering, Jennifer, maybe it's something the Carter Center might think about, but we need a place to, we'll have to set up a website and a task force to do these interviews and to archive them and to put them out. So it's something to think about.
Well, one of the things that we've seen, we're actually having a prayer service tonight to tell some of the stories, and people are still terrified. We still have ICE here. The Border Patrol has left, but we still have ICE. We still had arrest today. And so what we're doing is telling stories anonymously. They are, they're contacting attorneys, et cetera, but I'm not sure many will be willing to do videos just yet. Because if their status is secure, maybe someone in their family isn't. And I mean, we've seen that this administration is willing to go after anybody for anything, for any reason. And they, I think that we can do that, but it's going to need to, I think we're going to need to be very careful.
Well, you can
that's what I said too today, Mayor Roberts. I said the
Yes.
same exact thing, that anonymity is going to have to be key and crucial in that to make
Well, we
this
can
happen.
blacken the screens and
Yep.
and do them anonymously and just use the audio.
Yes,
But we
absolutely.
need, having watched this thing on Nuremberg last night,
Yep.
they did not use much footage at Nuremberg.
Yeah.
But it was documented because Eisenhower had the foresight to make sure everything was photographed. If he hadn't sent, I saw an interview with one of the photographers he sent in to Bergen-Belsen, which was not a death camp, by the way. There were 6 death camps where they had gas chambers, but there were thousands of concentration camps.
Right.
And all the death camps were outside of Germany. They put them all in Poland. All the gas chambers, they were in 6 camps. They were all out. They were all in Poland. And then we have a death camp in El Salvador, but we certainly have no shortage of concentration camps. And we need to be documenting as much as we possibly can. If people have to have a blackened screen and an anonymous interview, that's fine. But we need to put together the core team, the archive, and the broadcast setup. There are also 2 other things. Mike Hersh, do you want to mention the no orders situation?
Yeah, we discussed that on our phone call when we were planning this Zoom.
Yes, go ahead.
There are a bunch of members of Congress who very publicly I guess, a public service announcement urging police and members of the armed forces and explaining to them that they cannot and must not follow unlawful orders, that there's nothing that will shield them from consequences if they break the law, even if Trump or one of his henchmen or henchwomen order them to do so. And it's showing a lot of courage. The people who are doing so are facing death threats and other repercussions, but they're bravely speaking out. So we're always glad to see that.
They announced today that they are investigating Mark Kelly for being on that video.
The Department of War wants to indict Mark Kelly as a veteran for encouraging people to not follow orders. It's astounding. But you know what? I think also part of the video crew should be videoing as much of the arrest and getting as many of a video file of as many of the perpetrators from the Border Patrol and from ICE, so that they can also understand that they will face, when these guys are out of power, they will be on trial. And that should be, it's no accident these guys are all wearing masks. There's also a third thing I want to think about, which is documenting what these perpetrators are doing. They did put the top Nazis on trial: Goering, von Ribbentrop, Goebbels, Himmler, Heydrich. These guys, and the only one they did put Speer in prison for 20 years. They decided not to execute him, but he was in prison for 20 years. These people, Eric Jr., Noam, these people have to understand that their war crimes are going to be documented. And so it's a three-pronged setup, and we got to think about it. Okay, Jennifer, more from any of you? Anybody want to raise a hand? Please
The
do.
only, yeah, the only thing I
Greg?
want to add is that I think they do recognize that what they did in Chicago with tear gas and rubber bullets was probably beyond the pale, and so we have not seen that in North Carolina, thank goodness. But we have seen, you know, very rough handling, breaking of car windows when people wouldn't open their door, damage of property, and other brutal tactics. But at least we haven't seen yet the tear gas and the rubber bullets. And so,
Right.
thank you to those in Chicago who stood up to that.
Well, you
And
said Chicago. I had a deja vu of 68. That shows how old I am. I wanted to make sure you meet Jennifer Roberts. You need to meet GREG PALAST. GREG PALAST is one of our great American reporters. He's gonna talk in a minute, but he's the guy with the fedora there. And Tataka Bricka, I think you know also. Donald Smith and then Paul Newman, please.
Okay. Hi. I just put in local chat. Salon has an article that estimates show that the dismantling of USAID has already killed 600,000 people. And of course, if it continues, it can kill up to 14 million people could die. And now, of course, the Republican attack on the environmental regulations is going to kill probably millions more. And so dramatic action that I suggested to some indivisible people, actually they liked it, was to have, you know, a mass, you know, like a vigil, people holding signs showing people, you know, killed by this. And, you know, if we can collect these pictures and put them on signs and have people hold it as a vigil, it would be more dramatic than Indivisible's action right now, which is I'm not buying it. You know, that where they want to boycott Target, Home Depot, and Amazon. I mean, that's a worthy action, but it's going to be very hard to pull off, you know, because people like shopping. So
Well,
anyway,
this was Greg's topic was beyond No King's Day. So let's talk to Paul Newman, and then we'll go to Greg to jump in here, please. Paul Newman, did you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Harvey. I just want to mention that it's not just the Trump regime, it's the people who are backing it. I mean, you know, Elon Musk, you know, he's committing more crimes. GeoCorp, Core Civic, who are the private prisons, they're taking them to the private prisons and processing there so that they can make money off of them. And then they're violating human rights at those prisons. There's a prison in Texas where children are, I want to say unaliving because I'm on TikTok a lot, but that are dying in those prisons. I mean, it's horrible, the trauma that the kids are experiencing. There's the New York Times, Sunday Times had an article about it. I mean, it's just, those are the people they need to go after too. I mean, how do you go after a mass group of people like that? I mean, Ford was involved with, what was the name of that, Opel in Nazi Germany? You know, and Prescott Bush
Right.
was involved. How come they didn't go after them too?
Yes, indeed. You're right about that. So thank you, Paul, for that. But again, you know, we need a video archive. We need a website. We need to track these guys. By the way, and we're going to talk about this in the second hour. Trump today or yesterday attempted to void both the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act. And, you know, so, and as far as I'm concerned, the advocates of nuclear power need to also face the consequences of their advocacy, but that's another level. Mike Hersh, I know you had a guest invited, but we got GREG PALAST. Can we go to GREG PALAST now?
100%. Great to see you, Greg.
All right, Greg. Thank you. Fashionable as always. Jennifer, I'm introducing you to GREG PALAST and everybody else. He's been with us before. And Greg, go for it, please.
Okay. Can you hear me, by the way?
Of course.
Okay. And glad to hear from Portland. I was just on your favorite son's program this morning, Tom Hartman. And I recommend you go to Tom Hartman or the HartmanReport.com, where you will see an article I have written on Larry Summers' Jeffrey Epstein and the Endgame files. So I'll just make that one quick. In one of the reasons we're facing this disaster now is because of the disaster we faced in 1997 when Larry Summers, Timmy Geithner, and Robert Rubin were in charge of the Treasury. And they came up with a plan. I uncovered a memo that they wrote then at the time on it's a conspiracy freaks fantasy, because it was all about a plan between Geithner and Summers, with Rubin's approval, to contact the heads of the big six banks and say, how do we deregulate the entire banking order of the planet? And they came up with a scheme to threaten the 156 members of the World Trade Organization that if you didn't open your markets, your finance markets, to Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, and these other characters who were on this secret meeting group with Geithner and Summers, and they came up with a plan to use the WTO to smash down financial regulation worldwide, and that led us directly to the collapse of our mortgage markets in 2007 through 10, and a collapse of the world financial system immediately following, because of the poison of allowing banks to go into the derivatives gambling market and pressure foreign nations into opening up their banks. The only exceptions, by the way, were Lula of Brazil, and of course the Chinese refused to join too. So you can get that story. The reason why Larry Summers, I have the opportunity to bring out these files now, is of course that Summers was a frequent flyer on Air Epstein, and he was using Epstein as his so-called wingman for Epstein to give Summers advice on how to use his power as former president of Harvard, and also probably the most influential political economist in America, to basically get into the pants of his young female protege. And this creepy stuff. See, so he's using his coercive power there as he uses coercive power on third world nations. Basically, they told Ecuador, if you don't open up your finance markets, you can eat your own bananas. This is how they were operating. So if you want to read that report, go to Tom Hartman or Hartman Report or GregPalast.com. And the final thing, thank you, Harvey. I'm going to have to, get off in about 10 minutes at most because I have other programs I have to deal with. But I'd given a speech. I gave the keynote speech in San Diego at No King's Day. And I brought with me my mother. That is, I brought with me, let's see, there, I don't know if you could see it over here, the stars in the corner of my image. Let me move it over to, there you go. There's Mom. That's the flag that was draped on her coffin. She was given full military honors and buried at Camp Pendleton because she was the first woman to join the U.S. Coast Guard after Pearl Harbor. And I know that Mom, I held up that flag at No King's Day in San Diego, which is very much a military town, to say that, and by the way, as I would note, when she joined the Coast Guard, that's they used to call it, they now call it Antifa. She was an early anti-fascist. And the day before she died on her 97th, around her 97th birthday, there she was smiling in her wheelchair with a big impeach Trump t-shirt on. I'm not partisan, but Mom was. And she would have been horrified. And she was horrified at Trump's actions. But what I hear is my concern. I was thrilled that Mom and I were keynotes at No King's Day. We had nearly 100,000 people. The problem I had, what I'm very, very concerned with moving forward, because it's a strategy session. You'll see a piece I also wrote for Hartman and for Raw Story on my site is the failure of No King's Day. Like I said, I was proud to be keynote speaker, but I also was wondering what the hell we were doing. Frederick Douglass once said to the women's movement, to the budding suffragettes, power concedes nothing except to a demand. And because the suffragette movement started out with 16 demands, from prohibition of alcohol to the right of women to become church deacons. There were many things that women had to suffer. And as Frederick Douglass said, as Black people have to suffer. But you need one demand. And he said the demand should be the right to vote. And they won that right to vote. And then they were on everything else, including prohibition, by the way. Not necessarily the best outcome. But what was our demand at No King's Day? I'm up there and I'm complaining about a lot of things, including, firing, by the way, the first female commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard. I bet Mom didn't like that. But we had signs, everything from Free Gaza, anti-ICE raids, global warming, you name it. So what was the demand? What exactly were we aiming for? How are we going to win over the massive defection of young white men and a lot of young Black and Hispanic men too, to Trump? There was a 40 percentage point swing in the male youth vote. I think it's the biggest demographic swing I've ever seen in decades in politics. They went from Biden to Trump 40 percentage points. Now they're drifting back. How do we capture these people? You talked about seeing a lot of white hairs, a lot of angry grannies. How about some angry grandchildren? How do we reach these people? Now, one of the things I would note, here we were, 5 million plus in the street on No King's Day. At the same time, our government was shut down. It was shut down over one single issue, the right to have health care. And I saw almost no signs, in fact, I didn't see any sign saying hands off our health care. It was the number one issue in the country, and we ignored it. It was the number one issue that crosses political boundaries. The continuation of Medicaid and Obamacare subsidies was a cross-party issue. So we ignored the number one issue in America, the number one thing that the government was shut down, and we didn't grab a hold of it. We didn't do anything to reach out to the young. I was reading today in the Times, massive drop-off in the number of young people who participated in demonstrations versus the Black Lives Matters demonstrations after the killing of George Floyd. So we have to decide, where are we focusing? Are we going to win over people by saying we want open borders? Because that's how we're being portrayed. Do we want to say that our number one issue is Palestine? What do we want to say? When we make up our minds about what we want to say, then maybe we can win people over. And that means not only talking and shouting, it means listening very carefully. You got a lot of angry white young guys who see people getting jobs through affirmative action. Do Obama's kids really need to be given affirmative action to get into Harvard? I don't think so. So you have to understand what the concerns of these people are who are feeling left behind. They don't feel that they're part of your crowd. And unless you figure out how to get them back, we're in real trouble. We got to get the youth back. We just have to figure it out. And that means we have to figure out why we're protesting, what we're protesting. It's very nice to talk about some trial we're going to have in 10 years. We're not going to be here. That's going to have to be handled by those kids. And they aren't convinced at all. They aren't convinced at all.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Of course, I expect the trial to be in about 10 months, but we will see about that. And as for a demand, there will be another No King's March, I'm sure. And I think that the primary demand will be to get this king into prison. So let's see about that. Steve, thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Steve Caruso, are you not taking? Are you leaving?
I have about 10 minutes. Yes.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Steve Caruso and Dr. Nancy, please. And Mayor Jennifer, let us know if you need to speak up. If you've got another time demand, we'll give you another shot here, please. Go ahead, Dr. Steve Caruso.
Yeah, Eileen Proctor said in the chat that Trump's afraid of the Russian connections in the Epstein file, and not so much the sex, but that's neither here or there. What about the protest that happened on Saturday? Were you aware of that with Jessica Denson and the November 22nd rally where they had 5,000 people in DC, for what I've heard, and protesting, trying to get Trump impeached again with the help of, who's the fellow, John Boniface.
Greg, do you know about that rally?
No, and who does? And who cares? And by
Yeah,
the way, John
so-
Boniface, it's like, yeah, I don't know. They were also saying that Trump was cheated out of his 2020 election by computers. So, we're all over the place. One thing I will say, the ultimate, now look, those who know me know that my number one issue is vote suppression. If we can't give people their right to vote, we don't stand a chance. But I know that could not be the number one issue at No King's Day. There needed to be an issue. And the issue that is most concerning to people right now is healthcare. That's the most popular issue. And if we don't join with the people, they ain't going to join with us. That's number one. But the other is, yes. So we had, there was the organizing seemed very scattered. For example, I know in other states they had it, but despite having 100,000 people there, and the Democratic Party did have a real presence, there was not one registration table. Here were all these people, and no one was registering voters or checking their registrations, which is one of the big issues that I have. People don't realize that about 24 to 30 million people every 2 years are removed from the voter rolls. About 66% of them are wrongly removed. We have to start educating people and also communicating to people through social media, because young people don't remember the war and, that our big successes in civil rights in the war in Vietnam with marches. They operate in a different way, and we have to communicate in their way, but we also have to communicate with their concerns. And if all we're going to do is be scattered, ICE in Gaza and global warming, et cetera, at a certain point, we're so scattered. And we're scattered because that is the Bannon theory of how you defeat the left. You flood the zone with 45 evil things. We have to pick an evil and go after it, have it in our hand. Epstein was also another thing that crosses party lines. So, frankly, just open the files. But of course, you have a lot of Democrats resisting opening the files because you got more guys like Larry Summers, Democrats in there too, who were on Air Epstein.
I
So,
can't.
all I'm doing is arguing for focusing and having a strategy and having, as Fred Douglass said, a demand, because power gives up nothing,
I like the
nothing except
demand.
for a demand.
I like the demand of getting Trump out and putting him on trial. That would be great. And remember, there's talk of impeachment, but no president has ever been removed by impeachment and a trial in the Senate. But Nixon was forced to resign, and
Johnson was impeached by the Senate.
No,
He wasn't impeached. You're
Andrew
right.
Johnson.
Andrew
Johnson
Johnson
was impeached, but he was not removed. And
Not
when
removed.
he should have been, it would have been a great thing to have removed Andrew Johnson. He was a horrible guy, but they failed by one vote. Nixon was almost impeached, and he left before they impeached him. Clinton made us go through that ridiculous trial, and he was not removed, and Trump was impeached twice and not removed. But, Nixon was forced to resign. My demand, Trump gets out and we put him on trial.
Very nice, Harvey. Do you have a few more million people who will join you? And I don't think you do.
Well,
Trump,
we'll see.
that was the problem that we had with No King's Day. We need to have a demand that people give a damn about.
Okay.
And just getting rid of Trump and saying he's a bad guy, Trump's a jerk, that's not a plan. That's not a program. That's not a demand. It's not a demand at all. You have to have a demand that the people want. So you really want J.D. Vance? Okay. Fine.
All right. Well, we'll listen to your suggestion as well. Dr. Nancy and then Mike Hersh, please.
Yeah, 2 points, Greg. By the way, I refer lots of people to your website to see vigilantes.inc. Every time I see a comment on Facebook that's relative. But my hometown was Detroit. And if you look at the demographics of Michigan, Kamala or even Biden should have won Michigan. I was confronted a number of times before that election by young people, adults, medical students, livid about Palestine. All they had to do is we were going to stop the weapons. And it doesn't relate to my own opinion. That was, to me, a dividing factor with the young people. And I think that is a key issue for recapturing the young people.
Okay.
And secondly, I was in Washington, D.C. with Physicians for National Health program 3 weeks ago. And let me assure you, we had a couple other 100 people marching on the grounds of the Capitol and visiting our legislators. And we're trying to keep the rumbles up with the current smaller bills that are going on. But we are active.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Greg, I don't know if you know Nancy, but hopefully we'll meet in LA in a couple weeks. Mike,
sure. I bought his a number of things. Will and I supported your first movie, but the little camera that you used to stick in your hat.
Yeah. Yes,
okay.
I still have that hat with the hole in it for the camera.
We'll see each other January 4th. Mike Hersh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, for saying what you're saying. And I think a lot of people might be confused because unfortunately, people on the center left are scattered. They not only don't they understand the need for a strategy, they don't even understand what a strategy is. And as soon as you start talking about a strategy, they get into very fine nuances of policy, as if they had the power to implement them. And Frederick Douglass, that quote from Frederick Douglass is absolutely brilliant. But what I think that he kind of hinted at but didn't say directly is power concedes nothing unless you confront them with power. They're not going to yield anything just because you demand it or ask for it. You have to force them to do it. And that's what the suffragists did during World War I, when their labor was required in the factories. That's when the men were off in war. They used their leverage. Not only don't we use our leverage, we don't even know where the lever is. We don't even know what a lever is. So we need to think about first principles, how we can get together, have a focused presentation, and whether it's getting around the Green New Deal or the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, we need to present something that speaks to poor, working class and middle class white people, as well as all the interest groups and different demographics that we cater to, while the billionaires and oligarchs rob everybody blind and impoverish people more and more every day. Because desperation can lead to fascism. We've seen that over and over. Right. And we cannot afford to leave huge regions of our nation feeling neglected and desperate. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Mike. Very beautifully spoken.
Mike, thank you.
Mimi, I'm sorry, Myla Reeson. Donald, you've spoken. I'll get back to you again. And then I don't know if Mayor Jennifer Roberts is still with us. I don't know, Greg, if you've been in touch with her. She's in North Carolina and also with the Carter Center. So a great person for you to be working with. Go ahead.
Jennifer.
So Lynn H. from Southern California has joined us, and I was having a great conversation with Lynn last night. I'm hoping she can talk about how she has been going to college campuses and registering voters, just like you said, Greg. She has been relentless, and she's been educating college students about why it is important to vote. She breaks down all of the ballot issues, and she's phenomenal. And I'm hoping that she can talk for a couple of minutes about this project that she has been. So
let's get Mimi
yeah,
German.
I have a question that pertains to what we're doing.
Go ahead,
this
Mimi.
moment.
We'll get to Lynn.
Greg, I really appreciate what you're saying because it needs to be said. People don't understand that what you are not saying is that all of these other issues aren't important. And I think that people are so
They're all
attached
important.
to their own issues that they're like, oh, he's not mentioning my issue. That's not the point, everybody, that Greg is making. Greg is saying, how are we going to envelop, encourage, bring in people who aren't normally standing side by side with us, like folks on, who are Republican, who don't vote, who whatever they are. How do we bring them in? Everybody needs healthcare. Everybody. The government shut down over this one issue. So for everybody who's freaking out that Greg is not saying, oh, well, what about this and what about this? He's not saying that at all. He's saying, if you want to enlarge our spectrum so that we have more power and more push and more pull to get what we want, what is the thing that we all need? We all need healthcare. Am I correct, Greg, in saying
Yes,
that this is what I'm
exactly.
hearing from you?
Look, my number one issue is voting rights, but I would not say let's go out in the street for voting rights right now. What we do is go out into the streets and into the communities and into the workplaces and into the schools, saying, what do we agree on? We agree that healthcare, that staying healthy, staying alive is an American right. And we shut down the government over this. The Democratic Party did this. I don't have a lot of respect for the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter. They did a lot of polling and understood that if they were going to shut down the government, it had to be on this one issue. If we can be one issue focused and say, this is the party that's going to protect me and my family. These are your voters. And by the way, I suggest that everyone do what I and my team have done. Go to a lot of Trump rallies. I do. Talk to the people. Find out what they care about. You see people with no teeth who are clearly ill, who clearly don't have health insurance. These are the people you can win over. I'm not talking about you with your no teeth, Harvey. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying ignore other issues. I'm saying Fred Douglass said, we need a demand. That's the only thing that power concedes to. And thank you, Madam Mayor. This is very, very important. I don't want people, I'm glad that you kind of translated me. I'm not saying ignore anything else. I'm saying, what is the issue you can get people over on? What is it that they all care about and say, oh, I see now you care about me. And that's where we have to go if we want to build a progressive movement. Thank you. I've got to leave.
All right, bro. You'll be back. I'll see you soon. Thank you, Greg Palast.
You're very welcome. Great group. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we got 75 people. Well, now 74. But
Harvey,
thank you.
We have with us Nathan Taylor from Election Truth Alliance. With Tammy Wilson, who ran for Georgia's seat, they went over the Ohio vote and found some aberrations that are not consistent with a healthy voting system count. Do you want to have him on and speak?
Of course. But now let's do Lynn H. of Southern Cal. Can we give you a minute or two, and then Nathan a minute or two? That would be great. Go ahead, Lynn H. Mila Reeson identified you and tell us what you're doing, and then we'll go to Nathan.
Hi, I'm unmuted. I just got here. I'm late, so I missed what you said before, but I just caught a little of what Mila said. I do go out and register voters on the college campuses, and I heard people asking about what reasons. Well, right in front of me, I've got a visual from the internet, 100 reasons to vote. There are many, many reasons. And what I generally do is rather than tell them what they should vote for or why they should vote, I ask them what they care about. I'm more of a listener than a talker, and I find that works pretty well. I don't know what else to say other than
Do you successfully get them to register to vote?
There are three things that come up a lot when they don't want to vote. The young folks say, politics today is so ugly. People fight and get mad at each other, and I don't want to be part of that ugly, anger. The other one they say is, I don't know enough. I don't want to make a mistake. So I leave it to you who are more knowledgeable to vote and do the right thing. And I'll just, I'll be a passive observer. And the third one, which I hate to hear, but they say, my vote doesn't matter and it won't make a difference. So, those are the three objections, and that's, but it's just case by case, it's engaging in a conversation with them. I have a friend who's part of Field Team 6 that, they want to save the world from Trump, and they register voters as Democrats, and they just go directly up to the students, and they say, hi, I'm here to register to vote. Here's the form. And they just, what's your name? Where do you live? And of course you want to be a Democrat, right? And they just go right down the form and get the person registered. They're pretty assertive about it, and they are very good at getting results as far as registering voters. But I personally, my style is more of a, let's talk about what's going on in the world today. Let's talk about the impact that voting can have. And I'm going to look for this visual. I'll put it up. I don't know if you guys will be able to read the small print.
No, we can't. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Let's have you back next week, and we'll talk more about this. It's very important, and we certainly appreciate it. Thank you, Marla.
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
Just quickly. I recently, I'm in a group called Initiate Justice Action, and they're basically abolitionists. We're trying to fight for the rights of formerly incarcerated people or currently incarcerated people who can vote. If they're not, on a felony charge in state prison, they can vote and they can register. And so I recently decided I want to try something new, and that is to go into the county jails and register the people who are being held in county jails. That's my newest thought of that project. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, let's hope that they let you out when you're done. Okay, thank you so much, Lynn, and you'll come back with us, and you're in touch with Myla. Nathan Taylor, please go ahead, Nathan.
Hello, thanks so much for having me. Tammy's here as well. Give me one moment. You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I am with the Election Truth Alliance. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan group that's been investigating elections. And so some of you may have seen some of the stuff we've been doing. Mostly we are focused on the same things Greg is doing, where we're looking at how are our elections run and how can we prepare for the midterms. Some of the things that the ETA has been doing is looking at the systems and looking at some of the registration issues that Greg has brought up, but on the other side of the aisle in terms of the systems and how they host our registration. And we've started making public, as we've made our investigations at this point, we've released over 3 different reports, 3 different swing states, Nevada, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, looking at analyzing the election results for the 24 election. And we've started pretty much bringing up flags that we're finding when we look at the election results. They're not consistent with a free and fair election. Some of the things, the methodologies we use are like statistical methods. And one of the things we've done in the recent is we've actually filed a lawsuit in Pennsylvania based on some of those findings. And we've been working with people who have ran all across the U.S. at this point. We're on the ground in Florida, we're on the ground in Pennsylvania, and we're on the ground in Ohio. And because of that, Tammy reached out to us. She may want to give a little bit of her background, but she reached out to us because she found some weirdness in her race. And then we've begun to investigate there in Ohio, of all places. So Tammy, I didn't know if you wanted to throw a quick intro.
Tammy, what's your last name, please?
Mine?
Yeah.
Wilson?
Tammy Wilson.
Tammy Wilson,
okay.
Yep.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Tammy Wilson. Some of you may know me. I ran against Jim Jordan in the past 2 election cycles, in 22 and in 24. And the night of the election this last time, we were watching the numbers, and the feeling on the ground leading up to the election, everyone's like, oh my God, you're so going to win. I can feel it. I can feel it. We could all feel it because I worked so hard. My team and I, we worked really hard, and we had a lot of really great traction, and we just ran a really good campaign, and I had great ads everywhere. I am in marketing, so I know how to market online, unlike the Democrats. So the night of the election, I was beating Jordan, but then there was a moment when the election percentage hit 60. At that moment, it just locked in. And the numbers locked in, and they stayed at that percentage until the vote total hit 100% 2 weeks later. Now, there were 525 registered voters in my district. They said that voter turnout was low, but somehow we managed to have over 400,000 people show up to vote for my race. Now, in different counties, and I looked at all the numbers for each county, I knew exactly, my vote total was to hit anywhere from like 125 to 152 total votes. And I hit that number. Now, if you look at Jordan's numbers, if you take away the extra 100 votes that I think that he stole, then I would have won that race. But if you look at the different counties, so like, let's just say Hardin County, for example, and these numbers are not accurate. I'm just giving you an example of what I'm talking about. So let's say Hardin County had 12,000 Republicans registered to vote, and they had 8,000 Democrats registered to vote. Well, according to the numbers, all 12,000 Republicans showed up to vote, and only like 2,000 Democrats showed up to vote. On such a monumental race, it is hard for me to believe that hardly any Democrats showed up to vote. I just don't believe that. As hardcore as everyone was, as passionate as everyone was about the race and about our district and about getting rid of Jordan, because people hate Jim Jordan. Republicans even hate Jim Jordan. And I spoke to them all the time, and we spread the tea about the guy everywhere. That's what I used. All the money that we raised was to inform people about all of his nastiness that they just don't know, because they don't see that when they see the facade of him on TV. But we, told the truth about him, and we educated the public. We ran a really good race. So that's when I heard about Election Truth Alliance and I saw the video, I was like, oh my God, I got to get these people. I have to call Nathan. And luckily he took my call. They ran the numbers, and Nathan, tell them what you were able to uncover in Ohio.
Yeah, the main thing we have made public, and I see some questions in the chat. We have been investigating the systems we use to run our elections across the U.S., in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina. And people don't understand this. My background's in cybersecurity and information systems, by the way. 70% of the U.S. is using two major systems to count nearly 100% of our votes with machines. People don't understand hand-marked paper ballots, mail-in, even voting on some of the voting equipment touchscreens. It's all counted by computers at the end of the day. We don't hand count our ballots in the United States. There's only a handful of precincts in the U.S. So as we've dug into who owns those systems, we have raised concerns. And as Tammy mentions, we have started investigating both on the ground and using some more advanced analysis and figuring out where do things look weird. And because of that, we've now started making some of our findings public. Ohio, as mentioned, looks very concerning, not only at the presidential level, but some of these down ballot races, such as what Tammy has run in. But we've now started making public in Florida our findings where in 2016, Russia compromised the voting systems in Florida. And because of that, we've actually looked in some of the counties for the 24 election. We found instances of voters who had votes cast for them without their consent legally. We found instances of voters who were removed from the voter rolls digitally, such as what Greg talks about, is people being removed and they have no reason why. We're finding that might be a digital aspect as well. We're finding places of over 100% turnout. That's not possible, and a bunch of other things as well. Main thing is the ETA is going to make this public as we go forward here in the near future. The registration concerns we're finding, and it's mostly a question of what can we do about it, right? And as Greg says, how can you engage voters? How can you show up to vote and be confident that your vote's going to be counted correctly? So the ETA is also fighting that fight with some other groups to make sure that as we get closer to the midterms, people have a course of action to take, because if our systems are compromised, the midterms is a great opportunity to try again. And that's what we need to be ready for. And, we're here now to start investigating and actually watching this happen. So you can kind of call us more of a watchdog. So, yeah, I see a bunch of questions. I didn't want to take too much of your guys' time.
No, you're doing great. And I got to remind you that
Can I
Go ahead.
add
Go ahead,
something
Tammy.
else?
Yeah.
Nathan isn't really tooting his horn very well. They're actually working with the same people that were able to hack Putin, hacking the other elections. So Nathan, kind of explain that to people so they can understand the background a little bit about what's going on and how you guys are able to hack the hacking.
Well, I will say this. I will say, as we've been investigating how our systems work, we have found concerns, especially in Florida, where these patterns and these problems do go back to early 2016 and earlier, where we do know Russia got into voting systems in Florida and across the United States. We know that Russia has potentially been attempting and potentially being successful in getting into the systems in present day. And main thing is, what can we really make public as we go forward is we need action. So that's the big thing. Is I think this is the first step in starting to talk about it, making people aware that this is a problem, demanding investigations. And the ETA has actually reached out and sat down with multiple secretaries of state across the U.S. I think we're still in that period where a lot of people don't realize this is a problem. They don't realize this is possible. They don't think this is a thing. It can't happen here. That's the mentality.
Democrats do not acknowledge it. Yeah.
And so, we're going to keep pushing. That's the big thing.
I'll point out that Bob Petrakis and I, and it was Bob's genius that really did this. We pointed out over 100 different ways that the 2004 election in Ohio was stolen by the Republicans. And we made it public, and the Republicans couldn't have cared less, but the Democrats attacked us. And we gave that directly. No, John Kerry saw our work. He didn't say a word until later. He kind of said, oh, yeah, well, maybe, but the Democrats have all, we had a court case in Michigan in 2016 where a judge agreed to allow a recount in Michigan to check what we showed were clear fraudulent manipulations, and the Clinton campaign would not agree to even do that. It's always been the Democrats, and here we are.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. So maybe you can change that. I mean, but Ohio has been first it was Florida in 2000, and Greg broke all those stories, and then Bob and I broke the stories in Ohio 2004, and Al Gore never did a thing. And not only did he not do anything, he suppressed a congressional investigation in Florida 2000. They did it in Ohio 2004. They did it in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania in 2016. And, it's the Democrats who always...
It is. So, I took this information to our own Ohio Democratic Party, to Liz Walters, Sherrod Brown, Tim Ryan. We even had David Pepper on the call. And I also shared this information with Ken Martin, the new chair of the DNC, and I got absolutely nowhere with any of them.
No.
It is so important to me. I just cannot even believe it.
Well, they always say the same thing. They say, if you publicize this and show that the elections are being stolen, our people won't come out to vote. Well, what's the point of them coming out to vote if you're not going to count their votes?
And change the damn laws. I mean, that's why I wanted to get on your call, is because I want to learn from you and Bob and Stephen, what we can do, I've spoken with Nathan, but we need a citizen-led ballot initiative to actually change the laws in Ohio, and it can be the starter state, you know, just how they have ALEC, and they have ALEC that will write the legislation, and then they spin it out into all the other states. I want us to do a citizen-led ballot initiative here to have, you know, to protect the elections. That's what I want to know. How do we actually protect the elections so then we can, you know, use that legislation and just, you know, disseminate it everywhere.
You got two huge elections coming up. You got the governor race. You know, will Ohio elect Vivek Vivaswamy to be governor of Ohio? I don't know. And you've got Sherrod Brown coming back. So this is like absolutely critical to you know, the future of our country.
They hacked Sherrod's last race. They hacked Tim Ryan's race.
They hacked those races, and the Democrats do nothing. It's outrageous.
Nothing.
Nothing. Marion Eady and then Mickey Leader. Marion Eady, go ahead, please. And then Mickey, and then we'll go to Donald and Mike. And then we're going to move into energy. I don't see Arnie Gunderson or
yeah, we'll keep looking for him.
Robert. Anyway, go ahead, Marion, please.
It's so ironic that the Republicans have been the ones who have talked about wanting hand paper ballots, when it's also the Republicans who are mostly stealing the elections. And I wonder if there's opportunity there. And it would be interesting to investigate some fraught Republican primaries, to have some examples that you could feed to Republicans about why this was a problem.
So I'll say this about the paper ballots. This is a misconception that the ETA is fighting. We use paper ballots right now. Like 70, I believe almost 70% of the US, 73% cast their votes in the 24 election with paper ballots. But they're still counted by machines. They're still counted by optical scanners. So this push to go paperless or, you know, paper ballots doesn't change anything, because we're not going to hand count those paper ballots. That's not the initiative. It's to still count them with machines. And these machines are the ones we're very worried about, because they are the machines used all over the US. We have found during our investigations that the largest brand of those machines has cellular modems in a lot of their precinct scanners, and that's how they send the reports to the county during the election day. So I think that's, I'm worried that might be a smokescreen to, you know, get around the actual concerns of, hey, this is a problem, paper ballots or not.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please. Go ahead, Heidi.
I just wanted to share with you guys, I'm from Oregon, a little coastal town. I got removed from my duly elected seat. They had to put an illegal injunction, put me back in my chair, but I'm working with a council who doesn't want me on the council. My community started a recall, and my community went around and got the signatures by hand, turned them in to a person, and that person didn't count them right. So I'm hearing what you're saying, Nathan, about we're in this weird space between biased people and biased robots. And I hear what you're saying, Tammy, about there really not being laws. There's like so many laws. This whole process gets so convoluted that you can't just be a normal person running for a political seat, because you have to be kind of an attorney at this point to defend your votes, your people's votes, you know, all of the things. And so I really want to congratulate the two of you. And I just also want to say, like, this problem is small town, big town, in person, and
every
robot.
town.
It's every town, yeah, and every vote matters. And the way that you can prove, Nathan, that your vote counts, it's gonna matter. Like, that's what it is like people know that their votes aren't, like, they know their community maybe is, say, all blue or all red, and then they're shocked at the outcome of what's happened. And then there's no explanation of how it happened. In the recall that just happened in my community, they said the signatures didn't count because they didn't put initials in boxes where their addresses were put in. It's just a little technicality. it could put us into trials and you know, we could appeal it for years, or we just start over. And I say we, it's actually not me, it's my community doing it. But they will probably start over and do it all over again and still have no guarantee that their work will matter. And
Well, I
so
will
yeah,
say this. The one thing that the ETA is working on, why I'm at least, you know, I can keep doing the work I'm doing. I'm not like against the wall. Is one of the things we are doing is how can we make sure, how can we test our elections? And that's where, I don't know if you've seen some of it, where we've come up with methodologies to actually look at elections using advanced statistics. And as you said, right, if someone's got their thumb on the scale and they're throwing out votes for certain candidates, or they're manipulating whether digitally or physically, those are things that if done at a big enough scale, we can start catching that. Kind of like, you know, you look at your bank account, right? You've got analytics and AI that does all of this advanced stuff. We can do it to elections. And that's what the ETA has been doing. And that's where we've started finding all of these problems and going to the places. And so that at least brings me some hope, because I know if we keep looking at our elections like that going forward, we can keep finding these problems, keep fighting these problems. And, you know, I think that's the first step. You know, we don't know what success is going to look like, but we got to start fighting it. And now we have the tools to start doing it better. And yeah, we go from there.
well, I hope you get to do little towns as much as big towns, because we need you as bad as the big cities.
It's a fight. It's
Well,
a fight we'll take everywhere. You know, we start where we can make the biggest difference, and then, you know, we go from there.
well, you guys are hooked up now, so you should be able to talk to each other. And
Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, my email is nathan@electiontruthalliance.org. You can go to our website. At this point, I think we're gonna do more of big releases as we go forward. And, you know, Tammy's starting to kind of fight this fight on their end. But if there's other people as well who want us to start taking a look at maybe there's some their local races, there's people who felt like there was some weirdness, we can get your data for the 24 election. We're looking at the election since the 24 election. We've been looking at the recent elections, and we are, you know, gearing up for the midterms, and there'll be some new initiatives, some get out the vote, some registration drive type stuff where, you know, we're here to fight the fight and watch. And that's what's important.
If you guys remember, Bill Maher had people on his show. He had two guys. I don't know if it was North Carolina or South Carolina, but this was after Trump won the first time. And they worked for the state. I think they were elected officials, and they said they hired a third party to hack their voting machines off site. And they were able to do it. It took them 5 minutes to hack their voting machines off site. So I saw a question in the chat. People are asking about, you know, how does it happen? And, you know, in Ohio, they say that they don't have, you know, the voting machines hooked up to a modem or anything. But the software that's in the tabulation machines, that software was developed by, what's his face? What is his name?
Eurosovich brothers?
Elon Musk's
Oh.
guy. So I know I'm like trying to block them all. But Elon Musk's I don't know, assistant or employee or whatever, he's the one that wrote the software that goes inside of the tabulation machines. Those tabulation machines can actually create a ballot image. So it makes me wonder, why does Elon Musk so interested in our elections all of a sudden? Why is he, you know, collecting all these people's names, addresses, and all the information needed for them to register to vote? You know what I mean? And then we have the DOJ now requesting voter data. These are things that we need to, and I encouraged our new chair of the Ohio Democratic Party, you need to block Ohio from sending the voter data to them. I don't care if you have to start a lawsuit or what, but do not let them get our voter data. But I don't know what happened with that. So, but these are important things that everyone needs to be aware of. And the more people that talk about it, because it's like the big secret that no one talks about. It's like the pink elephant in the room or something. It's really bizarre.
I see a bunch of questions, and
Hey,
then
Sluggo,
yes,
you're
go ahead.
muted.
I just emailed Arnie Gunderson to see if he's going to join us here. Mickey Leader, you've been waiting, and then Donald Smith, you've been on. I see Paul Newman wants to jump back on too. Please. Oh, and Lynn Feinerman. Okay, go ahead. Mickey Leader, please.
Hi. Nathan, Rockland County, New York started a huge suit over what they believed was stealing votes. And I don't know where we are right now, but the discrepancy between, as you were talking, algorithms and the statistics was so blatant that the judge actually started a case. I don't know where we are, but there was terrible discrepancies with that. So I would love to be able, I'm going to email you to see if we can get you to speak with the people that are fighting this. New York State Assembly, we have Allegra Dengler chairs the New York State Election Integrity Committee, on which how I got involved in this. And the minutia of how many things can go wrong in how you don't protect the integrity of the votes is mind-blowing. And we can't get the assembly. There's a legislation that was passed by the Senate, but the assembly is not willing to take it on and look at it to change anything, to protect the counting, not to buy those new ESS machines, which is going to cost over 280 million, billion, whatever, in New York State to change over. Then you get the people who say, oh, if we go to paper balloting, we're going to have to print the ballots and we're going to have this and it's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, we have paper ballots already printed. So what you open my eyes to is how we count. And the whole damn thing is so upsetting. But the basic that I tried to do for this past election, when I met GREG PALAST through PDA and had some conversations with him, because I definitely see all of my friends, my relatives, the people I know are clueless about how hundreds of thousands of people in the South, I know in Florida, they had members of who, I don't know if it's MAGA, the GOP, people from Mars, go in and bring thousands of names to the attention of the Board of Elections and said these people don't live there, and they were expunged. I tried to teach people for this election, go online, make sure you're registered, make sure you bring all of your identity information, because they're going to stop you at some point and you won't be able to cast your ballot.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things we're looking at gearing up for the ETA and working with Smart Elections, who's filed that lawsuit you mentioned in New York, is how can we make it easier for voters for the midterms to check their registration and show up and, cast your vote. We found examples of this happening in the 24 election where voters showed up, active voters, they voted in their last elections, they show up and they've been removed illegally from the voter rolls and they had to cast a provisional ballot. And nothing ever got done about it. They just re-registered after the election. No one ever pursued anything. So we are wanting to start pursuing those fights too. We've been building out our legal action because, if it's one or two people, right, not a big deal, but potentially millions of voters are being removed illegally. That adds up very quickly. So
yes, it does. And we've seen this now since 2000 when GREG PALAST broke the stories out of Florida. And then in Ohio in 2004, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania in 2016, and again and again and again. So listen, you guys, get to the bottom of this. We will have you back. We are joined by Arnie Gunderson. We're going to switch gears now, and Robert Freeling, and go into energy. So let's wrap this, and we really appreciate this. But
Can
keep
I just
back.
say one last thing?
Of course, go ahead.
I think the trick is to have a massive amount of Democrats show up to vote. When that happens, I think when we outnumber the Republicans, then they can't hack it. That's what I've kind of looked at. If you think of the Wisconsin Supreme Court case, if you think of the New York race, I really think that that's key. So encouraging Democrats to get out to vote is absolute key to winning.
Right.
So,
But the party, the people in the party have to wake up. I mean, like I
I
say,
know.
the Republicans have never cared when we show that the elections are stolen,
Yeah.
and the Democrats come at
Don't
us
do
tooth and
anything.
nail. They
Yeah.
attacked Greg in 2000, me and Bob in 2004.
I ran for
And on
chair
and
of
on.
Ohio
Yeah.
Democratic Party, and they had almost a unanimous vote against me. So believe me, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Real quick now.
Sluggo, I just want to make sure they've heard of John Brakey. And
Yes, John
Yeah.
Brakey. You guys got to know John Brakey. We'll have
Yeah.
you back. We'll have
Yeah,
another
Nathan
session.
knows John.
next
Thank
I have
you.
John Brakey on speed dial. He calls me, once a month.
Well, now you
Beautiful.
gotta make it once a week. So let's do it.
Ah!
Thanks so much.
You're in touch with everybody. Lynn
Thank you.
Finerman has not spoken, and then we want to go to Melissa, and then we're going to start our section on energy. Arnie Gunderson has joined us, as has Robert Freeling. Lynn Finerman, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say just such big ups to both Nathan Taylor and Tammy Wilson for the work you're doing. It's absolutely critical. I'm really concerned that, and I put this in the chat, that MAGA, in the form of Liberty Voting, has basically bought all the election machinery out from under Dominion Voting, which had the largest amount of voting machines in the United States that were in operation. So I'm wondering if there's any investigation of Liberty Voting, anything that anybody's trying to do to get under them or make them be in any way responsible.
You know what? Can let's do a full session on this next week. If you can come back, Tammy, and Lynn and Paul Newman, Donald, everybody who has questions on this, I want to go into deeper detail. Are we all right on that, Lynn? Can we do this in the first hour next week? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
Melissa, real quick, and then Paul and Donald, then we're going to go to Arnie Gunderson. We're going to start a special half hour session with Arnie, Robert Freeling, and Ron Leonard and Carl Grossman talk about energy.
Hello, thanks for having me. I got two quick questions. What can we do to support those that are being indicted for telling us to obey direct orders from these idiots? And secondly, since standing up to Trump, my family thinks I'm an alarmist, and it's been really hard, and I thank you for your support.
Well, thank you, Melissa. And let's discuss all that next week. Please come back with us next week because we're scheduled to go into energy. But the first hour next week, we're going to revisit all this in deeper detail. This is where we started almost 6 years ago, and here we are back again. But maybe we've made some progress. I don't know. Donald Smith, real quick, and then we're going to rock and roll.
I'll make
One
this
other
quick.
hand.
And I put it in text too. This is I've been trying to say this for the last half hour.
Go.
But in response to GREG PALAST, who says we need a single issue. I mean, the Republicans have had multiple issues. There's sort of fake issues about social issues such as trans, guns, religion, parental rights, education, DEI. Charlie Kirk did multiple issues. But there are dozens of absolutely outrageous things that Trump Republicans are doing. I mean, all over the place, horrible, evil things that they're doing. And
yeah, we know, Donald. What's your point?
Let him go.
So the point is that the issue isn't that we need a single issue. The issue is that messaging is that for somehow the Republicans are better at rousing anger at messaging, and because of Fox News, people get sucked into this right wing. Yeah, so I just want to push back against what Paula said, and I put up an image by Hunter Thompson there that sort of illustrated that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Donald. Thank you, Mike. And let's. I'm going to lay down an intro. This is a new segment here. We're going to do a half hour with Arnie Gunderson, Robert Freeling, and Ron Leonard and Carl Grossman on energy. We still have, oh my God, 67 people with us. You folks are really great. This is going to be a very, very important segment now on energy. It's a half hour, and it will be presented as a special show on WGRN in Columbus, Ohio, and then put at the Pacifica Audio Port, thanks to our great engineer, Steve Caruso. So here we go. Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman. We're with the Sailing to Solartopia show on the Pacifica Radio Network. We're going to be focusing today on the global transition to renewable energy, to, you coined the phrase, Solartopia. We have four truly great figures in the safe energy movement with us, led by Arnie Gunderson, a nuclear engineer with a tremendous career, first as a pro-nuclear engineer and then as the world's leading expert, certainly during the Fukushima accident. When you saw somebody who knew what they were talking about on any of the networks talking about Fukushima, it was actually Arnie Gunderson. We have Robert Freeling coming to us from California, a real leading expert in the economics of the California grid. Remember, California is the fourth largest economy in the world now, behind China, the US, Germany, and ahead of Japan. And so we've had major issues with the energy grid in California. We're going to deal with Ron Leonard, a godfather of the safe energy industry worldwide, and Carl Grossman, the grand old man of no nukes, and the guy who helped to put down the Shoreham atomic reactors. We saw, and Arnold, what prompted me to call you is an amazing article about how Africa is going green, going solar, without a grid and without the governments. It's an astounding. We're talking about Africa here, a gargantuan continent of the world with hundreds of millions of people, and without a grid and without central generators, without a big government hoopla and program, that continent is going to solar energy. Solar punk. I love that word. So can you explain to us, and then we'll turn it over to Ron Leonard, who knows the technology, and then we'll go to California. Can you explain to us, Arnie Gunderson, as one of the world's leading engineers, what exactly is going on here?
Yeah, hey, Harvey, thank you for having me on. It reminds me very much of what the Midwest in the US was like in the 1930s. They didn't have electricity. And because of the Depression, Roosevelt was able to get rural electrification in. At the time, the only way to do that was with a power plant far away and transmission lines that came into the to the Midwest. Well, that paradigm, that 20th century paradigm of a power plant and long transmission lines is no longer accurate for the 21st century. And Africa is the leader in the new paradigm. You know, the population density in many areas in Africa is so small that the density of people, there's a lot of people, but their density is low, not in big cities. So they can't afford to run a transmission line out into those areas. And what's happening in Africa now is really cool. First, solar collectors are really, really cheap. And secondly, somebody's figured out a way of billing for that through cell phones so that people can essentially rent a solar collector and pay a nominal amount. And it's much, much cheaper because they don't have all that infrastructure. They don't have the transmission lines. So they've got automated billing and they've got on-site electricity. It's sort of the best of both worlds, and how areas that aren't yet developed will be going. It's not just Africa, but Southeast Asia is the next one in the row. When you have massive populations in confined spaces, it's a different story. But when you've got a continent of people distributed all over the place, they figured out a way to get power to them, essentially give them a solar collector, and figured out a way to pay it on a monthly basis through their cell phone. And
So who
The
gives them
article
a
you
solar
posted,
panel?
Harvey, was terrific, and I hope you post it on your site. It's a wonderful read in addition to some really heavy intellectually stimulating stuff.
Well, the solar punk movement, as best I could figure out, is based on the idea of using a cell phone to pay whoever got you the solar panel. Now, if I'm living I hate to say a mud hut or a tiny shack in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by lions and cobras, um, uh, and I have nothing. What this article is saying is that you can power a light, right? An electric light, an electric stove, which saves all sorts of pollution by no longer burning kerosene, a computer, and whatever else you need. But somehow people who have virtually no money are now able to get solar panels, and a cell phone, and can get so even one solar panel makes a total difference in your life, and then pay for it over the cell phone. How does that work?
Well,
because I want to do it in California. I have a mud hut in Los Angeles. How do I put one panel on my house and pay for it with my cell phone?
Well, unfortunately, you're going to need more than one panel for an American lifestyle, if you will. 'Cause you're going to want the refrigerator and the air conditioner and the big TV on the wall. So when you have no expectations, you can a light bulb is a big deal, a single light bulb. So now kids can study in the evening. A small refrigerator to keep drugs in some of these hospitals that are out there.
Right.
Pumps, electric pumps, and the biggest one for my mind is cooking. You mentioned it. A lot of the African women had pretty serious lung damage because they were cooking in this smoke, and now they can avoid that. So yeah, a couple of collectors goes a long way. And there's areas in the States where that'll work. People want to get off grid. If you live more than about 2,000 feet from a road, it costs you over $100,000 to run the wires in to a house in the States. So there's an awful lot of people that are saying, no, screw it. I'm not going to put in that transmission line. I'm going to go off the grid. When I was a kid, a solar collector about that big cost me $20, and I was really enthralled, so I bought one. The price of power has dropped of solar power has dropped 99.9%. And suddenly things that, when I was growing up, you couldn't afford a solar farm. They were just too damn expensive. But now the price, when prices drop 99.9%, they suddenly become universally available. And that's the exciting part of what we're living through, as long as, people like Gavin Newsom don't try to recess.
Oh my God, don't get me going. Well, of course, the big question is, with all these homes getting electrified, will Pornhub now change the culture of Africa? But we won't deal with that. Ron Leonard, you're a pioneer in the solar panel industry, and then we'll go to Robert Freeling, and then Carl Grossman. Ron, what can you say about the technological change that has made this possible?
Well, first I have to comment on your comment, which is lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. And the lions and tigers and bears are frankly the utility company. And the utility company has this thing called a monopoly on power. And what we're talking about right this second is giving people the right to produce their own power and escape the monopoly. They can put solar on their roof, a battery in their basement, and be free. Fly and be free. So you were talking about a very important breakthrough that happened in Africa, and it was done by this group called the Grameen Bank. It really was not in Africa, it was probably in India. And these micropayments enabled the poorest of the poor to break out of poverty. So what we're talking about right this second is poverty caused by the cost of electricity in America. Industrial scale poverty that people are seeing in California and New York and Florida, all around the United States. And if you don't believe that's a serious thing, go and investigate the simple fact that the governor of New Jersey was elected on the main campaign issue. That was the cost of electricity. We have a way out. We know that the United States, for the first time, has installed 50 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity in 2024 of solar panels. We can now make the stuff here with US labor, US parts. It's going to work. But that's not as remarkable as what happened of increased. It went from 21% of solar panel manufacturing higher in 1 year. And in this year, which isn't even open yet, we are jumping from 50 gigawatts manufacturing to 60 gigawatts manufacturing. If we keep up manufacturing 60 gigawatts of solar panels, we can flatten the curve that we've seen for the last 40 years of the increase in greenhouse gases. This is working. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right. And I think another part of the equation is batteries. Arnie, I assume a lot of the solar that's going into these houses, very small scale solar is also coming with battery technology, which is in a transition from lithium now to sodium, which Robert Freeling, you and I talked about that. How is that going to impact this transition from lithium, which is a rare, well, I mean, it's not quite a rare earth, but it is toxic, and it's also expensive compared to sodium, which is non-toxic and everywhere. How do you see that happening?
Well, even the cost of the lithium batteries has come down 90% over the last 10 or 15 years. So to the point where it's in other countries than the United States, competitive with the standard internal combustion car to run it on electricity. The sodium batteries are projected to be even cheaper, but both technologies will continue to decline in cost over time. The first sodium batteries are allegedly supposed to be starting mass manufacturing in China next month, the largest manufacturer in the world. So this is just getting started now with the new technology. The benefit, of course, of sodium is that it's all over the world. It's a component of salt, which is a part of the chemistry of salt in the ocean as well as on your table. So it's abundant everywhere in the world. In that way, it's different from lithium. But lithium is not particularly rare, and it's also important to keep in mind that these chemicals are only a small fraction of an actual battery. Only a few % of the weight of the battery, say in an electric car, is actually the lithium. Most of it is not lithium. It's just one part of the components. And the other thing is that the sodium batteries are resilient to temperature changes. Lithium batteries are vulnerable to cold weather, so places like Canada, Northern Europe, when it gets cold in the wintertime, these batteries can withstand that much better. And they're projecting that the new sodium batteries would last in your car for driving millions of miles, which opens the possibility that you would have your parents buy a car when you're born and you'd have it for the rest of your life. Even if you live to be 100 years old, you'd have the same car batteries. The car might fall apart, but the batteries may still work.
Well, if it's a Tesla, it'll definitely fall apart. Carl Grossman, Carl Grossman, you helped save all those mud huts on Long Island from Shoreham, the nuclear plant. Are you seeing this solar revolution in Long Island and elsewhere?
Well, not enough, but I think I mean, I'm talking to you from a house with 38 solar panels on it. It's an old saltbox, New England style house on the roof. And you drive around Long Island, you drive around the United States, and you'll see panels on many, many roofs. But what this this event, this miraculous event, I mean, there was just a slide there talking about the solar energy hardware revolution. This revolution, of all places, coming out of Africa, not exactly a high place area, puts us, in my view, on the cusp of Solartopia, of a revolution to an energy source we can live with, an energy source we can afford, an energy source we can manage, dependent on that thing called the sun, which doesn't charge any bill for the energy it sends down to this planet, to the Earth.
Well, that's why Trump is waging all-out war, along with Gavin Newsom. And I want to come back to Robert in a minute on that, but Gavin Newsom has joined Donald Trump in the assault on solar power because they're corporations that own these guys. In Newsom's case, it's the utilities. In Trump's case, it's the King Kong, coal, oil, nukes, and gas. They make their money on what comes free, and they're freaked out about it, obviously, and that's what this is all about. But according to Ron Leonard's assessment of, what did you say, 50 gigawatts? That's basically 50 nuclear plants, and then you can, with the industry has said, well, of course, when the sun doesn't shine, blah blah blah. But now with batteries, that's no longer relevant. That we have, the solar power goes 24/7. So the question I want to ask you, Arnie Gunderson, is Africa now going to never have a grid? Is that what's going to happen in Africa? Is all the homes in Africa are going to each have their solar panels and their batteries, and they'll be paying their bills over their cell phones, and none of this mishigas that we've gone through in America is going to happen?
I think if you don't have a grid already, you won't have a grid in the future. The big cities in Africa where there are power plants and installed grid, that's a different question. But that solar punk article talks about in places where it was too damn expensive to run a transmission line in for the few people per mile that were there. It's a revolution for rural areas in Africa, and it's a revolution for living off the grid. I think Ron said, if we can produce 50 gigawatts a year, that's a nuclear plant a week. That's freaking amazing. Remember, nuclear plants were supposedly attractive because the fuel was cheap. Well, this is free. The old 1960s, too cheap to meter. What made that work was the concept that uranium was going to be dirt cheap and they could power the world with it. But this really is cheap. As a matter of fact, it's free. Once you pay the initial cost, you're out of the woods.
Well, I saw a wonderful movie. It was a couple of years ago. A kid, like a teenager, they needed to pump water in his African village, and he managed to build them a windmill, and it worked. I cannot remember the name of the movie. It was absolutely wonderful. So, is there a companion wind energy component to this also? Not really.
Well, yeah, you've got to be in an area where there's a reasonable amount of wind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Small detail. Well, yeah, is there a country in Africa called South Dakota? But anyway, so Ron Leonard. Well, first I want to do a station identification. This is the Sailing to Solartopia show. You may be getting it over the Pacifica or some other network, or at WGRN in Columbus, Ohio. I'm Harvey Sluggo Wasserman. We are talking with four great experts on the coming, the in progress renewable revolution. Arnie Gunderson, Robert Freeling, Ron Leonard, Carl Grossman, and we're on the Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Zoom call. We got 58 people in in the virtual studio here. It's really fantastic. But I set out to put solar panels on my mud hut in Los Angeles, and I signed a contract with a company called Sunrun, and Gavin Newsom walked in and has absolutely devastated the solar industry in California, and my company went bankrupt. And I was told, I said, well, why can't I just put the panels on my roof? And they said, you can do that, but you have to have an approved professional installer, an electrician, do the work, and they can't do the work unless they hook up to the grid. And, come on, what's going on here? Robert Freeling, you're a Californian. Tell me, why is Gavin Newsom stabbing us in the back? This governor signed an agreement in 2018 to shut off the Diablo Canyon nuclear plants and phase in renewable energy. And the phase in part has gone ahead of budget, ahead of schedule, under budget. The battery revolution has changed everything in California, and still they're assaulting the solar industry and insisting on running these nuclear plants. Why can't we do in California what they're doing in Africa?
Well, the problem is that rooftop solar and solar energy generally has been too successful. And well, that's the problem. This was projected back in about a decade ago by the utilities with some help from outside environmental advocates who approached PG&E and said, look at the future. The state is moving to renewable energy. There's also going to be rooftop. That was large scale renewable energy that the utilities were going to buy because they're under a legal mandate to have ever increasing percentages of that going forward. And more customers, they said, are going to put solar on the roof. People are also getting more energy efficient, which is a legally mandated policy of the state. Many people were also leaving the utility electrical service to get alternative providers. In California, we have what's called community choice aggregation, which now supplies somewhere between 20 and 25% of the state's electricity. So the electric utility, quote unquote, monopolies, the for-profit ones at this point, are down to providing only about a quarter of the state's electricity. So things have radically changed. And since they saw that, PG&E said, we don't see a future for Diablo Canyon past 2025. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't meet any of our needs for the future. It doesn't really fit in a world with a lot of solar and wind power, because the solar and wind power are changing over the course of the day. And Diablo Canyon is absolutely locked in its output in a 24-hour period. So it cannot respond to changing demand. It cannot respond to grid emergencies. It can't respond to the changing amounts of solar and wind and other types of energy being produced. So they concluded it's uneconomic to continue running it. In addition to which, the nuclear plant is destroying ocean water, and they said that's another expense that they would have to fix. But the solar has grown beyond any expectation that they had. It's now providing 10% of the state's electricity. If it continues to grow at the rate that it has been, it will be larger than PG&E, and within 20 years larger than even Southern California Edison, which sells more electricity than any other utility. Meaning rooftop solar will, within the next couple decades, become the largest utility in California. And it will also become one of the largest sources of electric generation in the state in the next 10 years, exceeding even natural gas, because gas is being phased down. So all these things have been successful. It is now 1 out of 6 homes in California has rooftop solar. By the 2040s, that will probably approach 1 in 3 if it's not crushed. So that's why the utilities are jumping in there. And they're saying, oh, this is something that only rich people can afford. That narrative works when 1 out of 100 households is putting in solar. But if a third of the households have solar, that means the danger is for the utilities, everybody's going to have it. And that's the world we don't want.
And everybody will have batteries too, right, Ron Leonard? I mean,
they are.
We're at the point in California now where actually we're not in danger of a blackout. The only thing that could, because we have enough privately owned batteries to prevent a blackout, the only thing that could cause a blackout will be when Diablo Canyon blows up, right, Ron Leonard?
Well, Diablo Canyon not only blows up, but it curtails. That's a technical term, means chokes off the solar energy and renewable energy that California would normally be able to use and get clean energy to people rather than nuclear energy for people, which costs, I don't know, 10 times more than the solar energy.
Yeah.
So
Really?
Wood Mackenzie, this is a big accounting firm that does prognostication of how much energy you're going to see in the future. And Wood Mackenzie says that 59% of renewable energy between 2024 and 2023 will come from solar. Why is that? Is that a magical thing? No, solar is cheaper and easier to install. So if you wanted to order a big power plant from, say, GE today, a big turbine. I used to have to order those in the 1980s. And that big power plant would come to you in your location by about 2030. Why bother? It's just not going to be useful. It'll, in fact, it will be called a stranded asset, a thing that you really don't want hanging around because it costs too much to run. Now, look at what's happening worldwide. Solar developers are expected to install 3.8 terawatts of global capacity between 24 and 33. One terawatt is what the United States uses on an instantaneous basis every single day. So they could install 3 times, 4 times the amount of energy producing, clean energy producing systems, more or less almost every 2 years, supplanting the United States energy usage. And it's cheaper and it's faster. And we're going to wait for coal-fired or gas-fired power plants to be produced someplace, somewhere, and maybe you'll get them by 2030. It makes no sense.
No, this is King Kong, and this is what coal, oil, nukes, and gas, and this is what has Trump terrified. Carl Grossman, then we'll go back to Arnie. We're almost out of time. This is the Sailing to Solartopia show. We're syndicated nationwide, produced by Steve Caruso. Thank you so much, everybody. Carl Grossman, go ahead, please, and then Arnie.
Well, you could compare it to the folks that made the buggies that horses pulled 100 and so you.
Yeah,
they're going to resist. Technology has all but miraculously arrived in regard to solar technology. The success story in Africa is just a major lesson staring us in the face that it's here now, and it's a people's form of energy. We don't need big corporations. People can do it, and on a decentralized basis, provide for whatever the continent is, whatever the place is, provide energy which we can live with. Safe, clean, green energy, solar energy.
Right.
And remember, you heard that from Carl Grossman, the famous Carl Grossman, who was honored last weekend in Sag Harbor. We know who that guy is.
Totally, Carl. And the only thing that the Trump and the current energy industry have in common with the horse and buggy industry is the droppings left behind by the horses. Arnie, can you jump in and give us a little more on what's happened here and how we can make what's happening in Africa more relevant to what's happening in California?
Yeah, real quick, it's interesting. 2 governors jumped on this concept of resuscitating old nukes, and that was Newsom in California and Whitmer in Michigan. And both of them were presidential candidates if Biden passed out. And if Biden passed the baton in a orderly manner. And so I think it really drives home the point that retaining these old plants is a political issue, and it's Democrats and Republicans. There's really no difference at a party level who's pushing these old nukes, because the lobbying effort from that nuclear lobby is so extensive. If we're going to do this, it's got to be a bottom-up movement, and I think you're right. I think money is going to talk in the long run, and these things are so cheap now, it makes no sense not to use them.
Well, we keep hearing about this nuclear renaissance as if there's some great green grassroots groundswell for more nuclear power. And we've seen this time and again, these multi-billion-dollar PR pushes, and suddenly, these pompous, I believe in science, bloviators are saying that nuclear is the way to go. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Robert, can you give us a thumbnail guess? How much money would California save in electric charges if Diablo Canyon shut and it was replaced with solar?
Well, guess is the right word. The Energy Commission put out a report last year based on PG&E's information, if you can trust PG&E's numbers.
No, we can't.
So it leaves the rest of us guessing. Their guess was that it would cost about $1.2 to $1.3 billion a year starting next year to extend the plant till 2030. We don't need the plant at all, so I would argue that we'd save all the money because we have adequate resources to quote unquote replace it. All of the retail sellers of electricity, the community choice aggregators, the big utilities, have been ordered already by the commission, the CPUC, to fully replace Diablo Canyon. They all got a passing grade in their procurement plans saying that their plans are satisfactory to replace it. The state has built 14,000 megawatts of battery storage, which far exceeds the 2,000 and change megawatts of Diablo Canyon. There's now enough 4-hour batteries to back up Diablo Canyon around the clock as a baseload resource if we want. We've actually overbuilt batteries. The need in the state is only for a few hours in the early evening when the sun is going down between 4 or 5 in the afternoon till 8 or 9 in the evening. During certain days of the year, that becomes a demand problem. But the batteries easily fill that resource need many times over at this point. So
you're saying if we shut Diablo Canyon, and I'm paying bills in California, if we shut Diablo Canyon, the state will save upwards of $1.5 billion.
Well, about 1.2 to 1.3 billion dollars a year. Yeah, we don't need to build more power plants to have a reliable grid. And 2/3 of the electricity is already coming from carbon-free resources. And as I forget, was it Ron? Somebody mentioned that Diablo Canyon is actually blocking out, displacing probably 1,000 to 2,000 gigawatt hours a year of electricity from solar and wind power, and that will only increase over time.
Well, that's amazing. We're going to have another session like this, Arnie, Ron, Carl, Robert. I hope you can join me again in a couple of weeks. We'll revisit this. Meanwhile, we'll all go to Africa and see what a mud hut looks like with a solar panel on top of it. And this has been Sailing to Solartopia, a widely syndicated show on the transition to 100% renewable energy. We've talked with Carl Grossman, Ron Leonard, Robert Freeling, Arnie Gunderson, and thank you everybody for listening. Thank you WGRN for broadcasting this, among others. And we will see you next week. And we'll be sailing to Solartopia. All right, you guys, listen, this has been fantastic. All my GREEP folks and Amila Reason, did you want to jump in here and make a comment?
Well, I'd like to just mention and ask Robert, PG&E is now applying for a 20-year extension from the NRC to continue operating a Diablo. And I just wonder if you would comment on that application.
Yeah, I'd like Arnie as an engineer to comment on that too. Please.
Let me just be real quick. There is no such thing in nuke speak of a 5-year extension. You either go for nothing or you get 20. So they're applying for 20, even though they're claiming they only need it for 5. Yeah.
That's from the federal government, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The state law has permitted it to run one unit till 2029 and the other to 2030. So the state could pull the plug at any time because they've got the money spigot. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is not paying for Diablo Canyon. We are. So if the state says we're not going to pay for it anymore, PG&E will shut it down.
Well, also, the California Public Utilities Commission approved a plan forcing all correct me if I'm wrong, But I'm in the DWP, Department of Water and Power in Los Angeles. For those of you outside of California, but I understand that everybody in California is now paying for Diablo Canyon, even if you don't get any electricity at all. Is that true?
That's absolutely correct. And the reason is because running Diablo Canyon is so expensive, it can no longer be justified for PG&E's own customers. In fact, PG&E now gets over 60% of its electricity for its own customers from Diablo Canyon, which means there's not enough room left over for them to comply with the state mandate for renewable energy, which is only increasing. They're supposed to be getting 50% of their electricity going forward in the next couple of years, and by 2030, almost 60%. And they don't have enough room to fit Diablo Canyon in their portfolio. So they're making everybody pay for it.
And I read an article. It's rare that, of course, I get it online now. If I had had the actual paper from the LA Times, I would have thrown it across the room and into the trash. But they ran a story saying that, with a straight face, saying that solar energy was costing California because we're paying for it and we have to export it because there's too much of it. The theme of this article in the Los Angeles Times was we're getting too much solar energy and it's costing us money. And nowhere in the article did the words Diablo Canyon appear.
Yeah.
I mean, God. Anyway, Tatanka Bricka, jump in, please.
Well, it's interesting. You have election protection as an issue, and then you have the renewable Solartopia as an issue. And the common thing on the big picture, looking from the planet down, is living in a state and nationwide corporate captured situation. In the election situation, you see the folks in the 1980s seeing brown-skinned people in the nation overcoming white-skinned people, and so you plan to start rigging elections and reduce the number of people on all the things that we're seeing. And at the same time, you're saying the PG&E and the utilities looking at their loss of market share because it applied to an old age and is no longer relevant. And in both cases, they just show up with big money and temporarily buy their way out of the situation.
Right. Well, we have a situation in America now where we have a democracy that's based on $1, one vote. Right? Used to be one person, one vote. Now it's $1, one vote. Anybody that thinks that Elon Musk only put $300 million into the last presidential election is not paying attention. I mean, and you know, he put in all the money that was necessary, and that's what they're going to do again. Lynn Feinerman, Lynn, I think you're in California, yeah, Lynn? Let's see if we.
Yep, I'm in California, and I can't even express how much outrage I feel towards Gavin Newsom. The people of California in a proposition voted to close Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. This person has overridden the democratic will of the state of California. Then he goes gallivanting off to Brazil to portray himself as Mr. Ecology. He doesn't, and then of course he goes and tries to look like Mr. Democracy by redistricting in order to fight the rump. This guy is hateful. He is, and this is a big problem for the Democratic Party because he is the prime candidate. I mean, that's why they're trotting him out and he's doing all this stuff.
Right. It's outrageous. And we have an election coming up and for the governorship, and we've got to get a candidate who will seriously commit to shutting Diablo and making this transition. I mean, by every account, and correct me anybody if I'm wrong, the transition that was propositioned in 2018 by Jerry Brown to phase out Diablo and phase in renewables and batteries. That scenario has been hugely transcended, right? I mean, all the predictions for renewable and battery factoring into the equation, they've more than matched that. And meanwhile, Diablo's costs have gone up. Robert, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yeah, at this point, 2/3 of California's electricity supply is from renewable carbon-free sources. And so we don't need Diablo Canyon. They shut down San Onofre nuclear plant a decade ago, about 2012. And people were expecting that was going to blow our climate plans out of the water. And quite the opposite. Between 2008 and 2020, electricity greenhouse gas emissions dropped in half. And we've continued to reduce it. So you can shut a large nuclear plant, and despite all their doomsday saying, the other problem with a nuclear plant is that it doesn't increase output over time. Rooftop solar, solar energy, wind, energy efficiency, these things can grow over time. Nuclear plants, as has been pointed out, take many years to build. So this is not a climate solution even remotely. And it's displacing, pushing aside the clean energy resources that the state not only planned, but legally required to be built. So this is actually a problem for the state.
Let's look at another problem.
Harvey, can I just remind people that when we were working to keep San Onofre from being restarted, we were warned repeatedly that if they didn't restart San Onofre, that we would have blackouts and brownouts, and they did not materialize. I just wanted to put that in there. That was
right. And my understanding now, and Ron Leonard or Arnie Gunderson can correct me here, is that we have more than enough battery backup in California to make the idea of an electric blackout essentially academic, right? I mean, there's really not much concern anymore about a blackout in California. Is that true, Arnie?
Yeah, I think Robert already mentioned it, but or maybe it was Ron, the concept of base load makes no sense anymore. It used to be back in the 60s and 70s, the power was like a layer cake. The lowest layer would run all the time, but that was the cheapest piece. And then on top of that, as your power level went up, you added another layer of the layer cake. Well, now Diablo is the one that runs all the time. And it's not the cheapest. As a matter of fact, it's the most expensive. So renewables have inverted the layer cake. And the cheapest source of power is solar plus battery. I think I read that over the course of the first 10 months in California, that 60% of the total power consumed has been from wind, water, and solar. At that point, base load is totally irrelevant.
Right, and unnecessary. And Arnie, we only have a few minutes left, 12 actually. As a nuclear engineer, and I would be safe to say that you're the only nuclear engineer on the call, how safe is Diablo Canyon?
I wrote a massive report for Mothers for Peace back in 2018. And I think Robert had one on the economics, and I had one on the deferred maintenance and the safety of the plant. It is the plant I fear the most. And the issue is the seismic issues. You've got the NRC resident inspector says that this plant was underbuilt, that the earthquake's going to be worse if it ever happens. And then what I looked at was the amplified response vector. It's like, think of when the bottom of a building shakes, the top shakes more. It's like running with a jog bra on versus none. That the top shakes more than the bottom. Every plant that's had an earthquake has had a worse amplified response spectra than the engineers ever imagined. And none of those earthquakes were as bad as the quake that likely will hit Diablo at some point. Maybe they're going to whistle by past the graveyard and get by for another, 5, 10, 15 years without the big one. But if it hits, San Francisco's toast.
Well, and I live in LA. I got children and grandchildren. of all the things I'm afraid of in life, and there aren't that many, and the number one is Diablo Canyon. And there's no insurance. And, you know, these guys are assuring us, Gavin Newsom, is telling us it's all fine, and he's not going to pick up the pieces. And, you know, PG&E has already incinerated 8 people in San Bruno and 80 in Northern California. They just blew up a battery facility, for God's sakes. I mean, you got a nuclear plant being run by the Keystone Cops. I'm terrified. Mickey Leader, go ahead, and then we're going to sign off. And Carl, please. Mickey Leader, quickly. I guess.
I just got the thing for unmuting. I was trying to find
go
it.
ahead.
So. Okay, my question, and it may not be valid, but where is the ability if you don't continue with the big grids like we have across the United States, and you have individual solar, people can get their own solar panels, they generate their own stuff, and they just pay for the panels through their Venmo or whatever. Are we then we're not subject to being hacked and have the entire East Coast go out like happened when I was in college, 1963, the fall. Everybody had no power for close to a week.
Well, one thing that came out of that, of course, was that the birth rate went up. Aside from that, Ron Leonard, how viable is it that we can have a totally solar powered country with no grid?
Well, it's nice to have a grid for other reasons than the energy source, but functionally, we have now designed solar that it can provide power for a house, a factory, a city, a state. It's not really a problem to do this engineering wise. And my good friends, Mark and Richard Perez, have done a study. It's called a grid study of the Perez method, and they've done it in 11 or 12 countries around the world. And the study concludes, scientific, peer reviewed, that you can go 100% renewable energy. You want to have a large enough land area, but it is faster to do that. And oh, yeah, it's cheaper to do that than any other form of electricity. So science tells you something if you listen.
Yeah, there you go. And especially if you have a battery to back everything up.
I have another question.
Very quickly, Mickey.
Yeah, it relates to this. Are we safer from being hacked and invaded by other countries trying to cause power loss if we have the newest ideas where each of us have our own?
Yes, I can answer that. Absolutely.
Okay, tell us why, please, so that those of us.
Because you don't have a central grid that can be taken down. You don't have a central power plant. You know, what we've learned from the war in Ukraine now is that any nuclear plant is completely vulnerable to a single drone. God forbid that Putin get up on the wrong side of the bed and decide to hit Zaporizhia with another drone. I mean, he's already hit Chernobyl with a drone, and it was protected by the sarcophagus. Putin, because of nuclear, has the power to completely carpet all of Europe with radiation with $1,000 drone. That's all it would take. Same at Diablo Canyon. God help us, really. Thank you for that, Mickey. Mimi, you'll be the last, and this has been really fascinating. You guys are great. Thank you. Go ahead, Mimi, and thank you, Mickey, for that.
Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to remind folks about the Make Polluters Pay bills in California, and there's actually going to be a Make Polluters Pay week of action in the end of January. So the Make Polluters Pay in California have a hard deadline to pass one of the houses, their committees in one of the houses by the 16th, and then the bill would have to pass that same house in the California legislature by the end of the month. And this is so important because when I tell, I don't know what else to call them, normies, everyday people, that FEMA, sorry, y'all, when FEMA has given no money for the LA fires, people are very, very shocked. I mean, this is our new normal. So please, folks, do all that you can to pass resolutions in counties and cities and so forth. They're going to hear Make Polluters Pay in my county, Santa Clara County, on November 9th.
Okay,
So,
great.
Look what I pasted into the chat. It'll answer a lot of questions for you, including this idea of a distributed grid. Having solar on roofs in New York State would cause ratepayers to save $28 billion over the next 30 years. Think about it.
Carl Grossman, you wanted to jump in here?
Yeah, in terms of the threat of disaster at Diablo Canyon, all one has to do is take a drive around the area of Diablo Canyon. I mean, the only other industry in that area, hot spas, because these nuclear plants have been built on a geologically, well, it's really very, very close to earthquake faults, very unstable. I mean, it indeed is a devil's canyon in translation. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
It's a catastrophe in progress, as far as I'm concerned. And remember, when we talk, Mimi, about making polluters pay, there's no insurance on Diablo Canyon. You know, what we're seeing in LA, people are fighting in Altadena and Palisades over insurance payments. There aren't any that would come from Diablo Canyon, God forbid. Mimi, did you want to jump in one more time? Here we go.
yes, thank you so much. Yes, so the climate catastrophe going on is also affecting affordability, as it's this whole big web, as you mentioned, for the insurance for people. It affects housing, it affects our utilities, it affects our energy. So please, folks, do all that you can to make polluters pay. And I spoke with Rokana at the town hall yesterday for PDA, and I asked him, would he support Make Polluters Pay in California? And he said he would, with other of the I'm going to forget what that's called now, the other congressional folks of California. So
okay,
that was really
well,
great.
tell him he's got to help us shut Diablo Canyon now. I missed that call yesterday. Listen, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering, Mike Hersh, MAYOR HEIDE, Mimi German, Tatanka Bricka, everybody, Ron, Leonard, Arnie Gunderson, Carl Grossman, Robert Freeling. We will can keep coming back to this, and we got to find a candidate now in California who's going to carry the banner of going 100% renewable, and then once we do that, I think we could get that person elected. So no nukes, everybody. We'll see you in Solartopia. This has been an amazing session. I'm going to go see my grandson. We'll see you next week.
Arnie, I just wanted to let you know that I talked to Maggie when you were late for this Zoom, and she asked me to tell you that she had spoken to me.
Ah, okay.
All right, you guys. No nukes, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, no nukes.